ॐ सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। वासुदेवेन्द्र योगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधो विधीयते। Nanu Jivan Mukta Kaha. Then who is a Jivan Mukta, liberated while living? Yatha Dehoham Purushoham Brahmanoham Shudroham Asmidi Drudanischaya Tatha Naham Brahmana Na Shudraha Na Purushaha Kintu Asangaha Satchidananda Swarupaha प्रकाश रूप है सर्वांतर्यामी चिदाकाश रूपोस्मीति दृढ़ निश्चरूप अपरोक्ष ज्ञानवान जीवन मुक्त है। सो ज्ञानवान जीवन मुक्त है, द वन हु हैज नॉलेज ऑफ द ट्रू नेचर ऑफ वन सेल्फ इज लिबरेटेड। इट इज क्लैरिफाइड इन द नेक्स्ट पैसेज फर्दर ऑन पेज 41. ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि इति अपरोक्षज्ञानेन निखिलकर्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्तिः स्यात्। ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि इति अपरोक्षज्ञानेन. By this immediate knowledge, I am Brahman. Same thing that was stated in the previous passage in many other ways, that asangaha, Satchidananda Swarupaha, Prakash Rupaha. All this is only description of Brahman. Brahman is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam Brahma. The truth, knowledge, infinite is Brahman. Same as Satchit Ananda Swarupaha, existence, awareness, happiness or wholeness. That I am whole, I am complete. And thus a discovery of total satisfaction with one's own self. As I said in the beginning, the fundamental human problem is that of sorrow or sadness, and all the sorrow arises from a dissatisfaction or a non-acceptance of myself. I find myself not being able to measure up to my own expectation of myself. I want to see myself as a free person, a complete person, and I find myself bound, incomplete, and therefore there is a dissatisfaction with my own self. And this is what causes sorrow. And when the dissatisfaction builds up, becomes sadness, and further builds up, becomes depression. So whatever kind of emotional problems we have of sorrow or sadness or grief, whether it is stresses or tension, whatever it is, all of these ultimately can be traced to this one thing, and that is not being happy with myself, not being comfortable with myself. And this is what we call the bondage, or this is what we call the basic problem. And every moment, every one of us is seeking to become free from this one simple thing, and that is sorrow or unhappiness. Not knowing what causes sorrow, I do various things to become free from sorrow. Only when you recognize that the sorrow is the result of my non-acceptance of myself, that's a big step. To recognize that the cause of sorrow is lying within myself, in terms of my discomfort with myself, my non-acceptance of myself. And that a true acceptance of myself will bring about a freedom from sorrow. Not a make-believe acceptance, but then when I find myself acceptable, when I find myself what I would like to be, that is when I am happy with myself. So basically, discovering happiness is nothing but discovering happiness with one's own self. Because as you said, I am primarily unhappy with my own self. Brahmaivahamasmi. I am Brahman. I am limitless. I am boundless. That discovery. And it is a discovery of a fact that obtains. As you said, it is not, self is never bound. The 10th man is never lost even when it is thought to be lost. The lion is never lamb even when it takes itself to be lamb. And so also, I am never bound, never limited, even when I take myself to be bound or limited. The comforting thing is that, regardless of whatever superimpositions are done on the rope, just as those superimpositions such as snake, etc., do not change the rope, and so also my thought about that I am limited is a superimposition on myself, does not in any way change anything about myself. I remain ever free, ever liberated in truth. But in itself that is not enough. I have to know that and I have to own up that fact. So what is Brahman? Brahman is Jagat Karanam, the cause of the creation. What kind of cause? The material cause of the creation. And also the efficient cause of creation. The cause of creation. As Lord Krishna says, Mattah Paratanam Nanyat Kinchidasti Dhananjaya. Hey Dhananjaya, hey Arjuna, there is nothing other than me in this universe. I am everything. I am, that's how it is. So whatever it is that is the cause of the creation, the material cause, meaning that which is the self of the creation, the very essence of this creation, that from which the creation originates, by which it is sustained, unto which it goes back. Yato va imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, yat prayanti, abhisamvishanti. As Taittiriya Upanishad says, that from which this whole universe emerges, by which it is sustained, unto which it merges back. Tad vijñāsasva, tad brahmeti. Know that to be Brahman. Thus Brahman is presented as a Jagat Karanam, the very material cause of the creation, the very substance of which the whole universe is made. Same Brahman was earlier presented in the same Upanishad as Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman. That which is truth, which is knowledge, which is infinite, that is Brahman. That is the truth. What the Upanishad says is that is the truth of the life. So truth is the truth of the life. In the base of everything there is truthfulness, Satyam. In the base of everything there is Jnanam, knowledge. As the base of everything there is Anantam, the infinity. So truth, knowledge and infinity is the very basis of the whole universe, and that is Brahman. From that the whole universe has emerged, and by it is sustained, meaning that ultimately sustaining principles of whatever the universe is truth, not untruth. The sustaining principle is knowledge, not ignorance. Sustaining principle is wholeness, not division. So that is Brahman, which is a sustaining principle, that which is a fundamental harmony, that which connects everything, that which encompasses everything, that which informs everything. That because of which whatever is what it is. Like clay is that because of which the pot is what it is. The light is that because of which the sun is what it is. And so also the universe is whatever it is. That flower is flower. So what it is because the flower is flower. Asti, bhati, priyam. Every name and form, whatever it is because of asti, bhati, priyam, satyam, jnanam, anantam, the truth, intelligence or knowledge and wholeness. That is Brahman. So all there is one wholeness, one truth, one knowledge, one intelligence, one self. Then what about many? Upon that, this many is a superimposition. So, Atma eka satyam, ekam satyam, tadanyas sarvam mithya. Brahman or self alone is truth, everything else is superimposition. Meaning that it is one that appears as many. One has not become many, has not become, but appears as many. Appears as limited. The limitless appears as limited. Including my own self, that I appear to be a limited being, it is a limitless that appears to be limited. It is one that appears to be many. That one, the limitless, the truth, which is the basis of everything. Take anything and you will ultimately discover that. We can start the inquiry at any place. It will lead to the fundamental cause because the cause pervades the effect. It is immanent in that wherever you touch, wherever you inquire, that inquiry will lead you to discovery ultimately of Brahman. But how will it lead? That inquiry will lead to discovery of Brahman. Now there is something different from yourself as your own self. Meaning that any inquiry into the truth will discover or will lead to this fact that you are the truth of what you are inquiring into. Mean that you are Brahman. The Brahman is not something different from me. Brahman is the truth of the universe, but that is my own self. So Brahma, I am the self of all. Brahma means the self of all. Jagat Karanam, the cause of all. Just as the clay is the self of all the parts, and so also I am the self of all. And nothing is separate from me. Everything is in me. Yastu sarvani bhutani atman yevanu pashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam. One who sees all the beings in the self and sees the self in all the beings. Like a little wave sees all the other waves in himself, and the wave recognizes that I am water. Then the wave sees himself in all the beings. He is the self of all the waves. At the same time, all the waves are in him, that is water. Thus, this apparent duality or perceptible duality does not in any way negate the non-duality. It is non-duality in spite of apparent duality, because duality is apparent. Brahmivaham asmi, I am Brahman, I am limitless, I am non-dual, I am self of all. There is nothing apart from me, nothing that excludes me. He becomes free from every sense of exclusion. Whenever I take myself to be an individual being, I am excluded from the rest of the world. And I feel unhappy about it. Brahma is the self of all, so I do not exclude anything, nothing excludes me. Iti aparoksha jnanena. So in this aparoksha jnanam, immediate knowledge is there. Nikhila karma bandha vinirmukti syat. By that knowledge, one gains release or liberated from the bondage of karma, bondage of action. So this is another way of describing the bondage. One way of describing was this bondage of samsara is of the nature of this ceaseless sequence or unending sequence of birth and death. That you keep on plunging from one death to the other, from birth to the death, from another birth to the death, helplessly. If you do it willingly, there is no problem. As we said the other day, people say, why Swamiji, why should I be released from birth and death? I want to be born again. If you do it on your own volition. But a person is, birth shows helplessness. Person is born helplessly. I don't have a choice in determining what body I have, in what parentage I have. I don't seem to have a choice. I find things just happening. So one way of describing freedom is freedom from this process of birth and death. Or there is the freedom for all the notions that I have. Another way of describing. Freedom from the inner dissatisfaction. Another way of describing. Or freedom from bondage of karma. That's the Indian way. This karma is very typically Vedic. So bondage of karma. Then a person looks upon himself, herself as bound by karma. This is only people who have grown and raised in India will have this kind of a notion or complex. However, what is meant by this bondage of karma? Karma means action. What is meant by bondage of action? That I am what I am because of the action that I performed. What I am in the present is because of the past. And thus, ultimately, I am governed by the results of the actions that I performed. Once I perform an action, then it's like an arrow released from a bow, then I have no more control over it. Action will invariably produce a result, and I am accountable to the result. I am obliged to experience the effects of the result. I cannot get away from the result of whatever I have done. And we constantly perform actions and thus constantly keep on creating the outcomes or results or effects. And I must be present in order to experience the results of the actions that I perform. An action is like a seed. And when will that seed give rise to fruit depends on the type of seed. Certain seeds may require several years before they give rise to fruit. Like a mango, you don't get fruit right away, it takes several years. There are some other seeds which give rise to fruit maybe in 6 months or a year. So the fruit, when will it come? Under what conditions will it come? It is quite possible that what I do today, it's my children that will enjoy the fruit of what I am doing today, what I am sowing today, because I may not see the result in my lifetime. So thus certain seeds give rise to fruit in a short time. Some other seeds give rise to fruit in a little longer time. Some others may take even a very long time. And so also the various actions that I perform, each action is comparable to a seed. Some of the actions give rise to result very soon. Some of them give rise to result in near future. Some of them give rise to a little distant future. Some of them may give rise to a really remote future also. And I have to be around in order to experience the result of the action that I have performed. And the action that I perform, if they do not exhaust within this lifetime, I must be around in another lifetime to experience the result of what I have done now. Thus, action by producing the reaction or result perpetuates my limited existence. Whenever I perform an action with this notion that I am the karta, I am the agent of the action, I am the doer of the action, then I have to become bhokta, the enjoyer of the result of the action. A karta should necessarily become a bhokta. A doer has to necessarily become an experiencer of the result. A doer of action has to experience the result of the action. That is simple law of cause and effect. That action is the cause and the result is the effect that I produce. And that is what brings about this whole chain of birth and death. Because even in the process of experiencing the result, it is not that I have to be born next time, next embodiment, when all the actions will be over. But in the process of experiencing the results of my action, I keep performing new actions. And thus, all the time, every moment, actions are being performed by me, either at the level of body, or at the level of speech, or at the level of mind. And very often, I do not have freedom not to perform the action. Sometimes impulses, such as anger arises in me, makes me do things. Sometimes jealousy arises in me, makes me do things. And thus, various impulses arise in my mind, they make me do. And more often than not, I am not even free not to perform an action, I am made to perform actions. Therefore, a poor human being does not have a choice in not doing something. I cannot sit still, or I cannot sit still even for a moment, because that discomfort within myself will keep on making me do things. As a human being, I constantly suffer from, as we said, a sense of discomfort with my own self, a sense of dissatisfaction with my own self. And that dissatisfaction or discomfort makes me do something. I cannot live with that discomfort. Just as I cannot live with a bug in my ear, so also I cannot live with the discomfort in my heart. And prompted by the discomfort, I do various things. Therefore, I am actually compelled to perform actions. It's not that I perform actions. In fact, I am made to perform actions which create the result which I have to experience. And thus, until I become totally free from the sense of dissatisfaction, I am made to perform actions. I am made to take new embodiment, and thus this limited existence perpetuates. So this is called bondage of action. What is bondage? That an action produces the result, and that the one who performed the action is required to experience the result of the action. I can't escape that. And that requires me to take new embodiments and again new embodiments. And thus, this limited existence, this sorrowful existence always continues. As long as I am identified with the body, as long as I look upon myself as a limited individual, I am sorrowful. That is sorrow. Now and then, I may forget my individuality because of some distraction. Something pleasant happened and therefore my mind was distracted, and momentarily I forget. I forget that I am a small or I am a limited being. I forget that discomfort and I feel happy. Again that comes back. Like the moss on the water. Thick moss on the water, that green thing. So remove that with your hand if you want to drink water. They say that the water below the moss is always very pure, clean and cool. And therefore, to drink clean water, if you are traveling, look at the pond or little lake, the water is covered with moss, you part the moss with your hands. Drink the water. As soon as you remove the hands, the moss comes back. And so also, the moss of this sorrow gets parted when something happens, a distraction. I have a moment of clean water, happiness, again it comes back. So this is how the life is. It is a life of sadness. Human story is a sad story, basically. That is how it is meant to be, I guess, because then only we will have everybody thinks that everybody else is happy, but everybody is like that. It's a matter of, the type varies, that's all. And that is what provides the human being the motivation to become free, because no other creature has motivation to become free. The human being has that motivation. But this is called karma bandha, the bondage of karma. Because karma or the action produces result, and karma produces karma phala, which I should experience, another karma phala. That means I am always bound, dependent, helpless. So helplessness is the bondage. Then the text here says, Brahmevaham asmiti aparoksha jnanena. By that immediate knowledge, recognizing that I am Brahman, I am limitless, I find that there is no lack in me, there is no limit in me at all, there is no want. Thus, when I discover that I am free from a lack or want, then there is satisfaction with myself. I cannot be satisfied with a lacking I. With a wanting I can never be satisfied. When I discover myself free from lack or want, then there is a complete satisfaction with myself. No need to do anything. I become free from the need to do things. And so it is not that what is meant by becoming free from action is becoming free from need to perform action. Action that was so far performed to become free There is no need anymore to perform that action. Meaning that the wise person becomes free from all the personal agenda. Karmabandha nikhila karmabandha vinirmukti syat. This knowledge makes a person liberated from every kind of action. So what is nikhila? Every kind, all kinds of actions. You become free from all kinds of actions. What are these kinds of actions? So every statement has a seed of question in it. You become liberated by this knowledge. What do you mean liberated? Liberated from the bondage of actions. You become liberated from bondage of all kinds of action. So what are these kinds of action? So therefore the next question, Karmani kati vidhani santi इति चेत् आगामी संचित प्रारब्ध भेदेन त्रिविधानि सन्ति कर्माणि कति विधानि सन्ति. Of how many types the actions are? Sir, you say that the wise person becomes liberated from all kinds of action. How many kinds of action are there? Iti chet, if this is a question, then the teacher replies that actions are of three kinds. Agami, sanchita, prarabdha bhedena, trividhani santi. The karmas are of three kinds, called agami, sanchita and prarabdha. There are three terms. Agami, that which will yield result in future. Sanchita, that which has been accumulated in past. Prarabdha, that which has started giving a result. So that way, three kinds of karma are there. Then the teacher himself explains this term. What is agami, what is sanchita, what is prarabdha. So the next question. Agami karma kim ज्ञानोत्पत्त्यनन्तरं ज्ञानि देह कृतं पुण्यपापरूपं कर्म यदस्ति तदागामि इत्यभिधीयते. So teacher said that the actions are of three kinds: agami, sanchita, prarabdha. Agami karma kim? Sir, what do you mean when you say agami karma? So gam means to go. Agam means to come. Agami means that which is to come. So the teacher says, now the discussion about karma or the action is with reference to a jivan mukta or the one liberated while living. Although, in fact, this discussion applies to everybody. But the discussion is carried out here specifically in reference to a jivan mukta or a person who is liberated while living. Therefore it says jnanotpatti anantaram jnani deha kritam karma agami. So after the dawn of knowledge, when the person has discovered that I am liberated, then also the person continues to live. That's why this state is called Jivan Mukti. It is liberation while still living. So life does not go away. When you gain the knowledge, when you are liberated or free, you still continue to live. And we'll explain why it is so. But some people believe that when liberation or moksha takes place, that you pop off, meaning that you die, because now no purpose has been left. It is true that now no personal agenda is left for the wise person. And therefore somebody may think that why should he live? It would happen that he would die, but no, he continues to live. If he doesn't have personal agenda, then the whole world has a lot of agenda. And so Now, of course, he may not perform actions to fulfill his personal agenda. His actions are now performed to fulfill agenda of others. And therefore, a wise person continues to live and continues to be active also. What is the nature of our activity, we don't know. So, wise people are of different kinds. And there is no description of how the wise person will be. What kind of actions he will perform, at what pace he will perform, how many actions he will perform, there is no description of that. It depends upon their own personality. Some are very active, and therefore some wise people may be found to be very active day and night. Some are not like that. Some you will find just living in one place, not going anywhere. Some people are in the midst of society, some people away from the society. So there is no description of what a wise person will be. Yogaratova, bhogaratova, sangaratova, sangavihina, yasya brahmani ramate chittam, nandati, nandati, nandatyeva. Yogaratova, he may be absorbed in yoga, in samadhi, maybe. Bhogaratova, you find him indulging in pleasures. Sangaratova, in company of many people. Sangavihina, alone. And there is no description of how the wise person is. It is difficult for us to recognize, because nowhere in the scriptures we find how he will look like. What kind of clothes he will wear, what kind of hairstyle will he have, what kind of language he will speak, in what way he will sit, in what way he will walk. There is no description, or there is no rule as such at all. The description that we find is what is his inner vision, what is his perception. So what is the perception of a wise person, and therefore in our life also we can emulate that perception. And that perception brings about what kind of values? What are the values of this wise person? How does he conduct himself? Meaning, not the nature of conduct, but what is the attitude or the intention or motivation behind the conduct? What are his attitudes? So this is how he is described. What is his nature? Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitraha karunaha. Person who never hates anybody. One who is friendly with all, who is compassionate to all, who is free from a sense of ego, even free from sense of ownership. He doesn't have claim to anything. He doesn't need to claim any ownership also. Because ownership also is a need, he is free from that need also. Kshami, always forgiving, large-hearted, accommodating, never a source of fear or threat to anybody. Never non-demanding. So this is how we find the description, the traits of the wise person. But no other external description do we find. That's not even necessary. So we imbibe those traits, and in order to become like that. Therefore, what kind of action the wise person performs, there is no format or there is no rule. But the fact is that the wise person also is alive. Some action will be performed. If nothing else, at least he will be eating and drinking and sustaining the body. That much will be done. To sustain the body, you have to do minimum things at least. In the olden days, you have to go out and beg your food, bhiksha. Inasmuch as he has no possessions of his own, and therefore he doesn't even have the facility to cook the food. He doesn't, and therefore he goes out and begs the food. That much action he has to do. So minimum action such as that, to further, he might even be approached by some seekers of knowledge, and then he might even impart the knowledge, so he may teach also. Or he may be approached by some other people to solve their other problems, he might respond to that also. He might respond to the needs of the community, of the society, and therefore he might perform actions of that nature also. So what is this circle of concern? That depends upon the personality. to what he responds depends upon his personality. But something he will do. So, jnanotpatyanantaram, after the dawn of knowledge, jnani dehakrutam punyapapurupam karma, whatever action is performed, so you have to make a note here in the passage, jnani dehakrutam. The action performed by the body of the wise person, see, is not the jnani kritam. Not that the wise person performs the action, but the actions performed by his body, meaning by his personality. We'll understand what that means. Or anyway, let us say that the actions that we find being performed by this wise person. Punya paparupam. Some actions can be classified as punya, as virtuous actions, and we may classify some actions as papa, as sinful actions also. Because actions can be of two kinds, punya and papa, so whatever action he performs, whether it is classified as virtuous or vicious, whatever action is, that agamiti abhidiyate, that is called agami karma. Agami means that which will fructify in future, that which will come later. Meaning the action is performed now, the result will come later, naturally. Action that we perform in present will bear fruit or yield result in the future. In short, whatever actions are performed now, these are called agami karma. These are all the karmas that will yield result in future. So actions being performed now are called agami karma. So that's one kind of karma. The next is sanchitam. So that's next question. Sanchitam karma kim ananta koti janmana bija bhutam sata yat karma jatam purvarjitam tishthate tat sanchitam jneyam. Sanchita, chi, chayanam means collecting, plucking. Like you pluck the flowers from a garden, you collect them. That's called chayanam. From the root chi, in the sense of collection. So sanchita, samyak chitam, sanchitam, that which is very well collected, very well accumulated, is called sanchita. So the actions that are very well accumulated are called sanchita, accumulated actions. Agami karma, actions being performed now. Sanchita karma, all the accumulated actions. When did you accumulate them? We accumulated them in the past. So this is based on the acceptance that there is past birth. And that if you are not liberated in this birth, there will be future birth also. And this we discussed a number of times, that we have to accept the continuity of life. There cannot be an abrupt end to the life, nor can there be an accidental birth to the life. There has to be a continuity of life. Just as the matter changes the form, so also life changes the form and appears from one embodiment to the other, but there is a continuity. The reason why this has become a matter of debate of accepting previous birth or the next birth is only because we don't have memory. So the problem is, if you had the previous birth, how come you don't remember it? But it's good that we don't remember it, because if we remember can you imagine, suppose we are going through countless births, if you remember, you'll go crazy. In fact, there are many things that we have to forget about this life, let alone past. We want to get rid of them. And they don't leave us. And half our craze only because we cannot get rid of the past. Imagine what will happen to me. Suppose I was a donkey in the last birth. What would I? Suppose I remember those things, and what's the use of that? So even though we don't have memory of the specific experiences we had in the past, we have brought with us the resultant impressions of all those experiences, and therefore we possess a certain kind of nature when we are born. Thus, everybody is born with a distinct nature possessed by him or her. And that is the result of the accumulated things or accumulated result of what all we have done. We know that the present is the product of the past. And what we continue to do now will again create a future for ourselves. So thus, this process of birth and death is going on from the time beginningless. Anadi, anirvachya, avidya. The ignorance is without beginning. And therefore, since when is this process of birth and death going on, Swami? When did it? There is no beginning at all. It has been going on forever. But you are talking about the accumulated actions. But the very first time when there was no accumulation, what about that? There is no first time. There is no such thing as first. There is no such thing as beginning. We can never visualize beginning in our mind. Because for us to say that something began, it means that it must be non-existent before that moment. And you cannot visualize non-existence at all. Therefore, you can visualize the beginning of a part maybe. Suppose you can visualize when this part was made, when this object was made. But we know that before this form was created, it was in a different form, like a lump of clay. And even when this form is destroyed, some new form is going to be created. And therefore, we can neither visualize beginning nor we can visualize end. So there is no such thing as non-existence. That something did not exist or something will not exist, this we can never visualize, we can never arrive at logically also. Because something cannot be created from nothing. Otherwise it would be a nice business. If you can create all the ornaments without gold, that would have been wonderful. Is it not so? Create ornaments without gold. Create pots without clay. Create shirt without cloth. Cannot be. We must have something, the cause, in order to create the effect. And therefore no event happens without a reason. Birth also is an event, must have reason must be in the past. And therefore, there has to be a birth before this in order for this birth to take place. But why did that birth take place? Because of the earlier one. Why did that take place? Because of the earlier one. When did it take place in first? There is no such thing as first because there must be earlier one for anything to be. And therefore, it is a beginningless process. In short, we have taken countless embodiments of all varieties. We must have traveled in all the 84,000 or 8.4 million births. And so, at the same time, we must have also been born countless times in human embodiment also. And only human being can perform deliberate action. Therefore, the action performed by human being alone can be classified as punya or papa, as virtue or vice, which give rise to appropriate result. As far as other embodiments are concerned, they are merely to work out the actions and not create any new actions. And when you work out, you come back again as a human being. You might go into lower births if there are some vicious actions. You may go to higher births if there are virtuous actions. Having worked out or experienced the result of those actions, come back as a human being, again to begin the process, or again to continue the process. Thus, in every human embodiment, we perform actions, a number of actions. And it is not possible that we can exhaust the results of all of them in this lifetime because until the end we keep on performing them. And therefore, there are many actions that remain unexperienced in any given lifetime and they do not get destroyed, they get accumulated in our account. There is a universal computer which keeps memory of everything, keeps account of everything. And whatever has not been experienced by us is stored in our account and that it all gets accumulated. Like sometimes we make the arrangement that a portion of my salary should directly go to the bank in the savings account. And every month it goes in the savings accounts, gets accumulated. So there is accumulation. Sometimes we invest this money in what we call the term deposit. And so, say 15 years, 20 years, whatever, deposit. And you will mature after that time. So some of that matures. So you already have account that is accumulated in bank. Every month you keep on making some more money, therefore you keep adding. So what we do now every month is agami. What already been accumulated in the past is called sanchita. And from that, some deposits are fructified. That's called prarabdha. Same money, of course, but same money is called three ways. The money that has been accumulated, money that is being earned, and money that has become mature after deposit. Thus, sanchitam karma. We have accumulated actions or the result of actions like this in all the past countless births, and therefore a huge account actually stands in our name. When will it get exhausted? Never. It says, Ananta Kodi Janmanam Bija Bhutam. Bija means seed. An action is a seed which gives rise to a result. And thus actions we accumulated are countless, and therefore they have the potential of giving rise to countless births. Even if you don't do anything, what you accumulated itself is enough to give rise to countless births. But in every birth we'll keep on doing anyway, and thus keep on adding. And therefore, in itself, this process can go on for all the time to come. Urdhvamulam, adhashakam, ashwatham, prahu, avyayam. Lord Krishna says that this tree of samsara is a never-ending tree. So, ananta koti janmanam bija bhutam sat. So, that which is the nature of seed, or the potential of giving rise to countless births. Yat pu karma jatam, that whole jatam, jata means a whole host or group, that whole host of actions, group of actions, which is purvajitam, vajitam means earned. So that which is earned earlier, tishtati, that which remains, stands in my account, tat sanchitam gnayam, we know that to be sanchita karma or accumulated karma. So karma that is being performed, agami karma, karma that accumulates is called the sanchita karma, and next is the prarabdha karma. So that's the next question. Prarabdham karma kimiti ched. All right. Now what's the third kind of karma? What is prarabdha karma? If that is your question, then the answer is given. Idam shariram utpadya ihaloke evam sukha dukkhadi pradam yat karma tat prarabdham bhogena nashtam bhavati prarabdha karmanam bhogadeva kshayah iti. So loke evam or loke eva, the two readings are there. Idam shariram utpadya. So of all the accumulated actions that we have, some of them are fructified. Like a lot of investment that we have, some of that has resulted in fructified, matured. And so that mature deposit is now what you have in your hand. Nothing else you have in your hand. What you are earning is automatically being deposited in your account. What you accumulated is already invested. And therefore, from what all is invested, whatever has become mature is what comes to you. So that's called prarabdha. Prakarshena arabdham prarabdham. Arab means to begin or commence. Prakarshena arab, that which is very well commenced, which is very well begun, which has very well begun to fructify is called prarabdha. It is also called destining. So destiny is also another meaning of the word prarabdha. This meaning means the word destiny also is used to describe this karma. Thus each one of us is born with the prarabdha karma. Idam shariram utpadya. What is it that has given rise to this body? So what is that is the reason for my possessing this body? The actions that I performed in the past, whichever is given rise to this body. Why do you have the body that you have? because of the actions that you have. So whatever it is that has given rise to this body, this nature, these circumstances, this parentage and these events happening in the life is the prarabdha karma. See, another explanation that scientists would give rise to is genetics. So this birth is due to genetics, they will say. It is genes, your parents' genes and your ancestors and whatever, they give rise to this. So nature also can be explained, everything can be explained. Therefore, they do not see the need of accepting a previous birth to explain this birth, because if you find a simpler explanation or an evident explanation, then you need not accept something that is unseen. So as long as something that is seen or evident or pratyaksha is available for explanation, we should not involve a factor that is unseen. So if you can have an explanation of this birth based on something other than our past action, let us say, then we need not accept past because we can't prove it. Nobody has seen it. This uncertain factor should not be accepted if a certain factor, certain means a well-known factor, can explain the phenomenon. This is general rule. If you can explain a phenomenon by the known means, don't go for unknown means. So if our life can be explained by genetics, like by genes, if everything that happens in my life can be explained by genes, we need not go for previous birth, but we can't. What the genes can explain at the most is perhaps the characteristics of this body and maybe some of my characteristics. But then all along my life, I am going to be confronted with a variety of situations, not my creation. How do I explain that? Why do I meet with the situation I meet with and you meet with your situations? Why? Somebody got a bus, somebody missed the bus. Somebody got a flight, somebody missed it. Somebody landed safely, somebody met with an accident. How do genes explain this? Can genes explain why an accident happened? Or why some event happened? Why did I succeed? Why did I fail? Whatever. Why do I have these friends? Why do I go through various circumstances? Genes can't explain that. They can explain something, if at all they do. But karma, in fact, it explains the whole life. Not only this body, not only my nature, not only my traits, not only my parentage, not only the circumstances in which I am born, but then the circumstances that I go through in my life also are due to the prarabdha karma or destiny. So all destiny is explained by what we call prarabdha karma. Genes cannot explain destiny. Genes can explain at the most my traits, personal traits of this body or my nature. That too, of course, you skip the genes and you have to go to how many generations, nobody knows, and you will go to God ultimately anyway. But the prarabdha karma, the karma, is an all-inclusive principle, explains all the aspects of our life that we meet with. So, idam shariram utpadya, the actions that have been responsible for creating this body and this life and the various conditions, circumstances that I meet with. Iha loke eva sukha dukkhadi pradam yat karma. If the reading is eva, then that karma or that is the action that is responsible for experiences of pleasure and pain in this world only. Meaning prarabdha karma does not have effect in other births, only in this loka, in this birth. So that action which is responsible for the various experiences I go through in this lifetime. Sukha dukkhadi pradam yat karma. So my life is nothing but a series of experiences, sukha and dukkha, pleasure and pain. Tat prarabdham, that is called prarabdha karma. That is called the action that has already taken effect. Bhogera nashtam bhavati. And we have to experience this prarabdha karma, we have to experience this action which has taken effect. Even a wise person also is obliged to go through the experiences that his destiny will create. Why do you say that? Prarabdha karmanam bhogadeva kshaya iti. This is what is said. It is said that prarabdha karmanam, of the prarabdha karma, bhogadeva kshaya, the removal or exhaustion of prarabdha karma is only by bhoga, by experience. We have to experience that. So this is called prarabdha karma, the third kind of karma. Agami karma, sanchita karma and prarabdha karma. Of course, understand that the life is not all destiny. There is destiny, but as far as human being is concerned, there is free will also. So in every situation, what we meet with is destiny, and the way we respond is our free will. So we have the freedom to respond. What happens to us, we cannot control perhaps, and we call it our destiny. But we have the freedom to respond to every situation. That is where we can use our free will, our wisdom, our values, our attitudes. That is where the use of the wisdom, attitudes and values is in the way we can respond to the situation. The example that we give to explain this is like negotiating our vehicle in a typical New York street where there is traffic, crazy traffic. You cannot predict what will happen. Whether the next traffic light will be red or green, you don't know. Whether a taxi cab will come and somehow come in your way, you don't know. So, you don't know these things. You can't control them. All that is called destiny. But you still have your own vehicle. Your steering wheel, your accelerator, your brake, all of this. With that you can negotiate your vehicle safely in spite of all the chaos. So understand that we have a free will. That means that we have the freedom to negotiate our life properly in spite of whatever conditions we meet. Theoretically. It's not easy, but that requires that we have to grow in our maturity, which will enable us to negotiate ourselves in various situations. That's called free will. That's not the topic here. Topic here is what we call destiny, prarabdha. So first of all, the teacher gave us the definition of the three kinds of actions, agami, sanchita and prarabdha. Now the statement was made, aham brahmasmi aparoksha jnanena, by the immediate knowledge that I am Brahman. Nikhila karmajata, all the actions become destroyed. So the wise person has become free from all these actions. He is free from agami karma, sanchita karma and prarabdha karma. He is free from effect of all of this. So how does the wisdom, how does the knowledge make us free from all of these actions? That is now next being explained. On the page 44, next statement says, Sanchitam karma brahmaivahamasmi iti nischaya jnanena nashyati. All the accumulated actions, countless accumulated actions, which are the potential of giving rise to countless but all those actions, nashyati, it all gets destroyed by simple knowledge, Brahmaivahamasmi, I am Brahman. By that knowledge, all the actions that have been accumulated in the past, it all gets destroyed. To explain this, they give us this example of dream in the waking state. Imagine that I am dreaming, and in dream also we perform variety of actions. There also we find doing things, experiencing pleasure and pain, and doing good and bad actions in dream also. Sometimes in dream I do some good things, I am very charitable, sometimes I am vicious, sometimes I am angry, and thus in dream also I perform variety of actions which can be classified as punya and papa, as virtue and vice. But as soon as I wake up, all the actions performed in the dream, all of them get destroyed as soon as I wake up. Meaning that the waker is not accountable for any actions he has performed in dream. Now we have been saying that we are accountable for what we do. That is called law of karma. The law of karma is the law of cause and effect. Means that everyone is accountable for what everyone does. Means what he or she does. So really I am accountable for all those countless actions that are stored or accumulated in my account. And if we have to be accountable for them, we can never hope to be free at all because they will give rise to countless births. So So how do you become free? By waking up from the dream. So this is like comparable to a dream. We said that this is Ishvara Srishti, this is the creation of the Lord. It is projection of the total mind. And we are like those who are in the grand dream. And this dream, I have a certain, I look upon myself as so and so and I perform the actions. So, whatever actions I have performed in the past, all of them have been performed with this notion that I am the doer. I am the agent of action. I had what we call the abhimanam, the identification or the notion that I am the doer. Now, who is the wise person? One who is woken up. Woken up from the dream world. What's the dream world? The dream world of ignorance. Yes, sakshat kurute prabodha samaye svatmanamevadvayam. Dakshinamati Stotra says, yes, sakshat kurute prabodha samaye. When he wakes up. That is when he wakes up to his true nature. So, there is different kind of a sleep. We can be said to be sleeping. Ya nisha sarabhutanam tasyam jagrati sanyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. Supposedly all of us are awake, but we are all sleeping. In what? In the sleep of ignorance. How do you say, Swami, you are sleeping? We are all awake. We are jumping up and down. But just because we jump up and down doesn't mean that we are awake. In the dream also we jump up and down, that time we think that we are awake. Well, we don't want to say that this is dream, but the idea is that the reality is comparable to that. Now here also in this world, I function with the notion that I am the karta, I am the doer of the action. I am the bhokta, experience the result. This kartrutva, bhoktrutva, the doership, enjoyership are these superimposed notions about the self, not a reality of the self. And therefore, this fake fellow is performing all the actions. In fact, actions are all performed by Prakriti. And I have the abhimanam, identification that I am performing the action. So what is meant by wisdom? Waking up to the fact that I am a waker. I am no more an ego. I am no more an individual. I am no more karta bhokta. So kartrutva, bhoktrutva, the doership, enjoyership, which is the product of ignorance, they are gone. And therefore, all the actions performed by that, so the one who wakes up is no more accountable for what was done in the state of dream. And so also the wise person who knows now himself as Brahman, as actionless self, is no more accountable for the actions performed by the ego, by the one who thought himself to be the doer of the action. And thus, like waking up from the dream, he is free from all the actions performed in the dream. Or another way to explain is, that this person who is a very wealthy person, but suppose he dies without any successor, and he has not made a will also, and there is no successor. So what will happen to his wealth? It will all be taken by the government, I guess, because there is no successor. Similarly also, when you die, now that's a real death. One death is the death of the body, which is not the real death because there is only preparation for the next birth. What's the real death? The real death is the death or the removal of this ego, the notion that I am the individual, I am a doer, I am an enjoyer, which is born of ignorance. And therefore, the real death is the death of the ego, the falsification of ego, the doer. So then, there is no successor. And therefore, all the sanchita karma, all the wealth he has accumulated in terms of karma, it all goes where? It goes to the totality. He is no more accountable for it. So this is how by the knowledge one becomes free from the effects of all the actions accumulated in the past. As Lord Krishna says, Yathaidham samiddhognihi bhasmasat kurte arjuna jnanagnihi sarvakarmani bhasmasat kurte tatha. Just as a blazing fire turns all the combustible material to ashes, so also the fire of knowledge turns all this karma into ashes. So sanchita is gone. But second is agami. He continues to perform the action even after the enlightenment or wisdom. What about that? So the next one. Agami karmapi jnanena nashyate kincha agami karmanam nalini dalagata jalavata jnaninam sambandho nasti. Agami karma api. Even agami karma also, meaning that the karma, the actions that are being performed now, jnanena nashyati, that also gets destroyed by knowledge. How is that? The action that is being performed now, how can that be destroyed by knowledge? But the knowledge that I do not perform any action. Naiva kinchit karometi yukto manyeta tattvavit. The wise person knows that I do not perform any action. Pashyan, Shranvan, Sprushan, Jigran, even while seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, thinking, walking, talking, I don't do anything. Who is doing this? Indriyani, Indriyartheshu Vartante, it is Dharyan. Knowing that what is action is nothing but interaction of the sense organs with the sense objects. Who am I? I am just a witness. In my presence, the actions are being performed. So this is knowledge. What is the knowledge? Knowledge is to know the self as actionless. Who am I? I am the mere presence. In my presence, all actions become performed. Like in the presence of magnet, how the iron filings automatically move, and so also in the presence of self, that is consciousness, the mind, the sense organ, this body, all of this gets energized and performs actions. Therefore, wise person does not have the notion that I perform the action. You don't have the kartrutva, you don't have the sense of doership, well, you are not performing action. When you don't perform the action, there is no question of having to experience the results of the action. So, jnane nashyati, even agami karma, the action that is being performed also is not being performed from the standpoint of the wise person. Sarva karmani manasa sanyasyaste sukham vashi navadvare puredehi naiva kurvan nakarayan. So the wise person is said to dwell happily in the city of 11 gates. Happily sitting, dwelling, naiva kurvan nakarayan, neither doing anything nor making anyone do anything. And thus, even that's why jnani deha kritam. We see the action being performed at the level of the body of the wise person, so we take it for granted that he is performing the action. But he has no more any notion that I am performing action. It is performed at the level of body. We can say that as far as the wise person is concerned, because he has no agenda at all. Therefore, the agenda of the God, God's agenda becomes his agenda. He becomes an instrument in the hands of the Lord. And he is like a puppet who is all the time controlled, not by himself, by the Lord. So whatever sankalpa, the desires, whatever thoughts are planted in the mind, whatever desires, he follows that. Because he has no desire of his own. He has no agenda of his own. He is only fulfilling the agenda of the Lord. Meaning that whatever he does has to be a blessing to the whole universe, because he is totally a non-demanding person. Because he doesn't ask for anything, any favor, no reward, no return. And therefore, he continues to perform action as long as the destiny is, but actions are not either performed with the notion of doership, nor, of course, there is any personal agenda. So the next sentence is kincha agami karmanam nalini dalagada jalavad jnaninam sambandho nasti. In fact, when the action is being performed, the wise person has no relationship whatever. Like a drop of water in a lotus leaf. How the drop of water in a lotus petal has no connection at all, even though the water is on the petal, but then there is no connection. The water does not touch, does not wet the lotus petal. And so also the actions being performed by the wise person do not in any way taint him. So, the Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tektva karoti lipyate nasapapena padmapatram ivam. Same example is given by Lord Krishna, that just as water does not wet the lotus leaves, so also, or lotus petal, so also the actions do not wet or taint the wise person, because he is free from the sense of the worship. But he is still performing actions. The result has to, if the result does not go to him, somewhere it has to go. So we said, as far as accumulated actions are concerned, they go to the general total account. But the actions he is performing now, if they do not affect him, then what will be the effect of them? So to complete the account, the next statement is made here. Kincha ye jnaninam stuvante bhajante archayante tan prati jnani kritam agami punyam gacchati ye jnaninam nindante dvishante dukkha pradhanam kurvante tan prati jnani kritam sarvam agami kriyamanam yat avachyam karma papatmakam tad gacchati. Now this is, we have to make a note of this rather seriously. It says, Kincha, ye jnaninam stuvanti, bhajanti, archayanti. Those people who stuvanti, those who praise the wise person, bhajanti, those who serve him, archayanti, those who worship him, tan prati, towards them, jnani kritam agami punyam gacchati. So whatever punya karma is performed by the wise person, and most of his karma is punya karma anyway, where will they go? People who worship him, praise him, serve him, they will become the beneficiaries of the results of all the punya karma performed by the wise person. Because he doesn't need them. Therefore, it goes to his fans, his followers, his disciples, his devotees, And so, they become the beneficiary of those punya karma. On the other hand, ye jnaninam nindanti, those people who abused him by words, censure him, dvishanti, hate him, dukkha pradhanam kurvanti, give him pain or discomfort in any way. So those people are antagonistic to the jnani. Tan prati jnani kritam sarvam agami kriyamanam yat avachyam karma papatmakam tad gacchati. Those fellows become the recipients of all the vicious actions, papa karma, performed by jnani. We don't expect him to perform any papa karma, but what happens is, any action you perform is going to involve some little violence, something. No action can be perfect. As Lord Krishna says, just as fire is always accompanied with some smoke, and so also, sarvarambhaya doshana dhumena agni rivavrataha. Any action you perform, some dosha will be there. You praise somebody feels hurt, you didn't say anything. So several people are here, you praise one of them, how nice you are, but I am not nice, the other person feels. And therefore, praising somebody automatically amounts to censuring somebody else. And therefore, regardless of what you do, it can never be perfect. And that being the case, we may say that some blemish is always involved in every action, which may produce a negative effect. So even though 99% of positive effect is created, there could be 1% of negative effect. Where will that go? To all those fellows who abuse him, hate him, harass him, whatever. So, papatmakam tad gacchati. This is accounting. This is called the accounting thing, You have to account for all the karma. See, understand, prarabdha karma is already discussed. So now they doesn't talk because bhogena kshiyate. As far as prarabdha karma is concerned, destiny is concerned, you have to go through this. Even wise person also has to go through this. As you said, this body is the result of the prarabdha karma, the destiny. And therefore, it is not the wise person who keeps the body, it is destiny who sustains the body. Just as when you release the arrow from the bow, then the arrow will take its own course when its momentum will get exhausted. Until then, the arrow will continue to move. Or another example is like a potter's wheel. So he's turning the wheel to make them parts. After his action is finished, and he stops turning the wheel, but because of momentum, the wheel will continue to turn for a period of time until the momentum gets exhausted. Similarly, also, even though the wise person has stopped turning the wheel, because now he does not perform any deliberate actions at all, he has stopped turning the wheel. But the wheel, namely body, continues to function as long as the momentum is there. And therefore, it is prarabdha. So, prarabdha karmanam bhogena kshaya iti. As far as the prarabdha karma is concerned, destiny is concerned, they can be exhausted only by bhoga or experience. Therefore, the wise person also has his own destiny. So we find that they also go through all kinds of circumstances. Sometimes pleasant, sometimes unpleasant. Honor, dishonor. Disrespect, disrespect. Comfort, discomfort. Health, disease. All these situations are created by destiny. We find that wise people also go through those things. But that is from the standpoint of the onlooker. The onlookers feel that he is suffering. But as far as he is concerned, even prarabdha also is not for him. This is all accounting for the standpoint of other people. Prarabdha is for the body. And he doesn't identify with the body anyway. Therefore, as far as the wise person is concerned, there is no prarabdha also. No agami because no sense of so no identification body, therefore no prarabdha. No sense of ego, therefore no sanchita. And no sense of doership, therefore no agami. Therefore he becomes free from all the bondage of actions on the strength of the knowledge. So this is another way of explaining moksha, liberation, freedom from the action, freedom from the result of the action. Action is said to bind us when action can produce reaction in us. And so we find no reaction because actions fail to perform, impact at all. Dukkheshu anudvignamanaha sukheshu vigataspruhaha vitarag bhaya krodha sthitadihi muni uchyate. Dukkheshu anudvignamanaha, one who does not get perturbed in the situations that are normally called painful. Sukheshu vigataspruhaha, one who is free from any craving, even in situations that are considered to be pleasant. Because vitaraga bhaya krodha, he is free from raga, from attachment or demand, bhaya, from fear, krodha, from anger. So, you can say freedom is freedom from raga, dvesha, bhaya, krodha, freedom from fear, anger, greed, lust, attachment, aversion. He is free from all of that. That being the case, he maintains that composure of the mind, the cheerfulness of the mind, the wholeness and completeness regardless of what the situations are. And just as in the midst of the storm also, just as what you call it, the eye of the storm. No? That the light, the light actually that is for guiding the sheep and so forth. So just as that poor pillar, whatever it is, never gets affected, whatever storms are there. And so also, the wise person doesn't get affected by any storms that come. So he remains abiding in his own self. This is called mukti or liberation. And so in conclusion it is said, Tatha cha atmavida samsaram tirtva brahmanandam yahaiva prapnoti. Tatha cha, and thus, atmavid, the knower of the self, Samsaram Titva, having crossed the samsara, Brahmanandam Yaheva Prapnati, he gains the Brahmanandam, the fullness that is Brahman, here, right here while he is alive. It's by the very virtue of knowledge that is crossed the samsara of the nature of ignorance, and it is not that he attains Brahmananda. Brahman, which is Ananda, is his nature, except that he now owns of that, he abides in that. And that is in keeping with the Upanishad, says the next sentence, Tarati Shokam Atmavita Iti Shrutehe. This is being said on the strength of the statement of the Upanishad, which says, Tarati Shokam Atmavit, the knower of the self crosses the sorrow. So Sage Narada, the dialogue between Sage Narada, Sanat Kumara and Sage Narada. So he said, knower of the self. That shows that all the sorrow is product of ignorance of the self. If sorrow can be removed by the knowledge of the self, it means that the sorrow is the product of ignorance of the self. The ignorance being removed, he becomes free from sorrow. The final thing, it is also, we find descriptions of how to determine the destiny of a person when a person dies. The manner in which the person dies also sometimes tells his destiny, or what his future is going to be, where he is going to be born, or what kind of death it is. So descriptions you find when you die, when anybody dies, from which aperture the soul departs from this body. There are apertures above and lower. So if a person departs, you can see the mouth opens, eyes, so then people can tell how he left, how this Jivatma left his body. If the eyes are open, then if the mouth is open, so this is leaving or departing from the upper apertures, or a person can also depart from the lower apertures also. Depending, so when he goes to lower apertures, we know it is the lower yonis. Upper, we know it is upper yoni, and so forth. This is how it is said. So sometimes people judge the person based on the death. When did he die? Is it during the day or during night? In the white half of the month or black half of the month? In the northern solstice, southern solstice? All of this, of course, So that is how sometimes you can judge whether Uttarayana, Dakshinayana, Agnir Jyoti, Ahashuklaham, Sanmasa Uttarayanam. So, the northern solstice, during the bright half, during the day, and then it is an auspicious death. Southern solstice, in the dark half, during the night, is so-called inauspicious death. This is for information. Don't judge anybody or don't judge yourself. Don't bother about this. But this is a complex that, you see, depending on the culture in which you grow, you carry some of these things with you. So people in India will carry this thing because this is what they know, this is what they hear all the time. And so, if the death determines the kind of person that this was, how about the wise person's death? Where do you expect him to die? So, on a place where you die. There are auspicious places where you die, there are inauspicious places where you die. Auspicious time when you die or inauspicious time. Auspicious way of dying, inauspicious way of dying. A lot of thought is given to this death and the manner in which it happens, and that's how we can judge the person. So how do you judge the wise person? How will he die? In what place should he die? A wise person, where will he die? When will he die? How will he die? Says no such rule at all, because he's already liberated. Doesn't matter, because he is no more identified with the body. The rule is this, as Lord Krishna says, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tame vaidi kaunteya sada tad bhav bhavitaha. Whatever be the last thought at the time of death, that determines the destiny. But then what will be the last thought? That is the accumulated result of all the thoughts he has entertained in the life. Meaning that one does not have freedom to entertain a certain thought at the time of death, whatever thoughts we entertain during the lifetime, or whatever attitudes, whatever values, whatever feelings, whatever intentions. So whatever all we entertain during the lifetime, all of that will result into the final thought at the end, and that determines the destiny. We don't know what the thought is. That's the reason why when the person is dying, they repeat God's names or something he hears, and maybe that also plants that thought in him, and that is how he gets liberated. That's the idea. But then, so that thought, we don't know what it is. So all we can work for is to make sure that at the time of death, the right thought comes. And that can happen only when we entertain right thoughts while we are alive. Sada tad bhava bhavitaha. So whatever kind of thought is entertained during the lifetime, that is what ultimately results into that last thought. Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kaleyaram yah prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayaha. At the time, Lord Krishna says, at the time of death, a person departs thinking of me. Then he attains me, there is no doubt about that. So important, what does a wise person think of? Aham Brahmasmi. His thought is, I am Brahman. All the time. And therefore, even at the time of death also, his thought will be what? I am Brahman. And therefore, he is Brahman. So that is what counts, not where and when and the way he dies. Just to say that he is liberated in every way. That even the death also does not in any way bind him. The last passage is said here. Tanum tyajitva akasyam swapachasya gruhe thava jnana samprapti samaye mukto sau vigata shayah iti smrutescha. Tanum tyajitva akasyam. May he leave his body in Kashi, Banaras. So Banaras is a very auspicious place. If you die in Banaras, you are sure to be liberated. That's the belief. Because it said that those people who die in Banaras, in Kashi, Lord Shiva himself comes at the time of death. And the ear of the dying person, Lord Shiva utters that Taraka mantra, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. And therefore he dies then with the thought of this mantra, with the Lord's name, and so he will be liberated. So belief is that whoever gives up the body in Kashi or Banaras becomes liberated. Therefore even today also in India, there are people who have value of going and living in Kashi. There are facilities there for people to die. And so people want to leave their body there. In case death is not going to come, then there is a well. You can jump in there and bring about your death also. Anyway, whatever it is. But these are all beliefs. Every culture has its own belief. So there are certain places which are considered to be very auspicious. There were 7 cities are said to be moksha cities, Saptaite mokshadaha smrutaha. So this is the 7 cities, of which Kashi is one, Ayodhya is another one, Mathura is third one, Dwarika, Haridwar, Avantika, that is Ujjain. These are said to be the cities which are the cities which give you moksha, liberation. So, but then, would you expect wise person to die in Kashi? Not necessarily. Tanum tyajitva akasyam, he might give up his body in Kashi. Swapachasya gruhetava, or in the home of a Swapacha, or a Chandala, or a dog eater. Means the lowest possible person, most impure person. Meaning that the wise person may give up his body in a very auspicious or very sacred place such as Kashi, or he may die also in the home of a most impure person. It doesn't matter where he dies, doesn't matter when he dies, doesn't matter how he dies. Why so? Jnana samprapti samaye. Because at the very time of gaining the knowledge, muktaha, so this person is already liberated. He is no more there in the sense that there is no more identification. That death has already taken place, the death of the sense of individuality. Mukto so vigata ashaya, because his vigata ashaya, he is all the abodes, meaning that no special preference, he is free from the sense of ego, free from sense of individuality, and therefore free from the sense of time and place. If I look upon myself as bound by time and place, then time and place are important to me. But when I know I am free from the idea of time and place, doesn't matter what time and place it is, and therefore, as far as a wise person is concerned, it doesn't matter where he dies, when he dies, how he dies, because he's already dead. He's already dead in terms of becoming free from the identification of the body. And thus, with the discussion of Jivan Mukti and the discussion of the freedom from the bondage of karma, this very short treatise called Tattvabodha is concluded. That is said in the last sentence. Iti Tattvabodha Prakaranam Samaptam. Iti, thus, in this manner, Tattvabodha Prakaranam, the Prakaranam, the treatise called Tattvabodha, the self-knowledge or knowledge of the truth, Samaptam, is thus ends. So, Samyak Aptam, very well, Samapta, that very well attained is called Samapta, Samyak Aptam. And so, it concludes or it ends, thus, the treatise called Tattvabodha. So, this is a very, very small treatise. Understand that it is still, it has everything that we need to know, really. It gives us an overview of the entire Vedanta. And therefore, one can keep on dwelling upon this. Read this again and read means study it again and again. If you have written your notes, study them, listen to tapes, whatever. But an association with this is very good, inasmuch as it tells us what the life is about, what we are searching for in the life, what is our nature, what is the solution, what's the problem, what's the solution, and all of this is very beautifully, briefly, but very beautifully outlined here. So in a way, it's a text complete in itself. Every Prakarana Grantha, every treatise is essentially complete in itself, and so this is a very introductory text. This is perhaps like the kindergarten, or like that's the kind of thing, or primary school, whatever you want to call it. So this is supposed to be a very primary text, an introductory text. But that doesn't mean that it is incomplete. It is complete. And it is called primary because it is meant for people who don't have any great background of the scriptures, who are not familiar with all those technical terms, etc. For them also, that they can get what all the scriptures have to teach. For that, these kind of texts are compiled. And it was wonderful that we had the opportunity to complete this text in front of the people who are very eager to learn. So it has been a great joy on my part also. And as we said, we always